Alright, so this is the cover of my book, and its title is The Gathering of Soldiers Part 1. And it's a book series, so Roman Legacy is what the series is called. And it was finished after numerous years of research, typing, and pretty much just like delving into it like an author would. So to sum things up, I'll say it like this book I consider it as like my masterpiece, my first work. And if I zoom in for a bit, there you go. That's a zoomed in version. You can see that it has a really great illustration. A friend drew it for me, and it's really nice. I'll put it. I'll put his info in the comment in the section below, so you'll be able to see him. And there's a disclaimer. So this is a disclaimer. Yeah, it was inspired by the long lifespan of Roman nation. So including the early times of Rome, like Rome city state, the Republic, and then in transition to all that stuff, Punic Wars, to the Empire of Julius Caesar, and and furthermore into what was it into like separation during the early 80s, and then transition over to the Byzantine Empire, which this book will focus, and on the death, like right before the end of Byzantine Empire. So, but then they still call themselves as Romans. So that's how I would address them as in my book, because I want to be as historical as possible, and that means addressing the medievals, the medieval people as who they addressed themselves as. So there you go. I mean, the illustrations you wouldn't be seeing them, because like they'll be put into my book, and all the good stuff you'll be up to you you'll be seeing them later in time when you actually do buy the book. But all the contents of the book will be spoken. Like I'll read it to you so you can just listen to it right when you're going to sleep, or I mean that's how I would used to do it with stuff like this. Just like when I'm really tired, I'll just listen to it oh, and slowly fall asleep, slowly and eventually. You know how it goes. You know what I'm saying. And yeah, I mean this Upwork website is pretty good, and like the you'll see in the coming chapters that they're the so-called main characters. Like you'll be able to vaguely identify them. So they're based from my three middle school friends. These are their names, and I'll also put my name in the information section of the video. So it's it's kind of it's kind of hard step that I'm taking, just fully exposing myself out there. But this is how it goes. Just gotta go with the flow. There you go, right back to the illustration, and I'll zoom into it so you can see it more clearly about how it is. And I'll begin. So, chapter 1 is To Constantinopolis and Beyond. So, Constantinopolis, that's like the Greek version of Istanbul. So, Constantinople, but polis is a city, so city of Constantinopolis. So, let's begin. Pasius, wake up. The captain's making an announcement. A young man tapped on Pasio's shoulder while speaking. Oh, are we there yet? Pasios was awakened from his deep sleep. Pasios is a 17-year-old teenager who was on a sleep going towards Constantinopolis. It was late March of 6945 Anno Mundi. That'll be 1437 AD. And he was on his way to a special military service approved by his teacher back in his hometown near Corinthos. The young man who was shaking Apasios is Petros, and Apasios was still half asleep when Petros started speaking again. No, we're not there, but we're nearing Silimbria for a break, Petros said. Just then, the captain started speaking. Attention, folks, we're almost at Silimbria right now, so take a quick break there to do whatever you ought to do, and we'll resume our journey when I blow the horn. Understood? The captain stood tall on the upper deck, looking down at the passengers below. As he made the announcement, two of his higher ranking workers stood next to him, one at his left and the other at his right. Everyone muttered out their agreements or simply nodded in response. This kind of announcement was made from time to time, and it was nothing serious, so they all immediately went back to their business. Where's Galen? Apasios glanced at Petros. Galen was Petros' master and the guide to Apasios. He was also a friend of Heraclius, and Heraclius was Apasios' training teacher. For now, Galen was guiding Apasios to a special military organization, and they were heading to Constantinopolis due to a sincere request from Heraclius. He's below the deck. He'll be up soon, Petros said and pointed below them. It was sometime in the morning, with the sun shining brightly above the horizon, but Apasios was still quite dizzy at the moment. It was because the previous days of his journey had taken much toll on him, and he was struggling to keep pace with Galen and Petros. He didn't know why they were hustling so much, nor did he ever ask them why. It also seemed as if the whole world was against him, since he was literally shoved away from the monastery when his 3 years of education ended there. Then his parents happily bade him farewell, and didn't even try to bring him back to the house. After that, Galen and Petros took him across boring fields, crumbling roads, dirty streets of various villages, harbors, and towns, and they've just sailed for such a long time that it felt like his body was suspended on the water at all times. Obviously, Galen and Petros were enough of a nuisance, since the captain gave him no comfort by sailing his ship through the previous night to get to a random town that he didn't even know. Even though Apasios had a deep sleep, his body ached quite much due to sleeping on a sailing ship. Soon, Apasios looked up at the captain and realized that the old man was sauntering around on the upper deck, smiling in joy and drinking from his wineskin every so often. Furthermore, the captain had these 12 men who worked for him, and they would also drink much wine and make merry all over the ship. However, Apasios was in no mood of making merry with any of them, so he began eating his bread and cheese in the corner by himself and looked at his surroundings. There were other Romans on the ship with them. Few of them were soldiers who were hired to travel with them and help the workers maintain order on the ship, and the rest were civilians like himself, who were also going to Constantinopolis. They all ate food similar to what he was eating, and some of them even had fish and fruits. A while later, Petros joined them for breakfast and gave him a fish to eat. After a long while, they docked at the harbor of Silimbria. As the ship was about to dock, people slowly looked around like sick patients looking for the doctor, thinking about what and where they should go. And when the ship stopped, they went out to take care of their various business. Soon afterwards, everyone came back to resume their journey. When the ship started sailing again, Pasios looked around and again saw the captain. But this time he was sitting on a chair, apparently tired, but yet still holding onto the wineskin to drink at a moment's notice. Having been interested in the old man since way back, Pasios walked up to him to exchange conversation. Sir, do you know the messenger of Constantinopolis named Galen? Pasios said after taking a look at his surroundings. Yes, but what makes you ask that? The captain looked at him carefully. Galen is my guide. He told me that he takes your ship whenever he has occasion to travel. Pasios moved closer to the captain. So, I was wondering if you guys knew each other very much. Pasios put his right hand up to his chin in a thinking posture. Oh, that takes me way back in my life. Galen is my close friend's son. The captain thought for a while and took a sip from his wineskin. Then he looked back at Apotheos in a nostalgic expression. I've known him ever since he was born, and he's like a nephew to me. Seen him growing up too. When he was around your age, he became a soldier to defend his home city, Thessalonica. Captain stopped talking and he was lost in thought. So, what happened after? Apotheos was very curious. But he was also annoyed that the old man would just stop talking when it was about to become interesting. The captain made a miscellaneous gesture with his hands. Many years passed, and we made him flee the city when there was no hope of fending off the Turks. Then we came to Constantinopolis, and Galen started working as a messenger for military. He then took a deep breath. He contacted me months ago about this voyage that he had to take, since he wanted me to be ready to transport him when the time comes. The captain leaned back in his chair. Wait, so you move your ship based on what Galen says? Pasius said. Yeah, it's a long story. My friend gave me all rights of this ship to me, saying that he just wants to retire and go back to his family farm. The captain sipped on his wineskin. But when he did that, he also gave me a couple of stipulations to adhere, which was to help Galen, his son, in the messenger work, to the best of my abilities as his ship's captain. Suddenly he stood up from his chair and looked at Apotheos. Also, I need to send a small portion of my profits to him, so that he could have an easier time taking care of his household expenses. Then he stretched his arms, trying to get himself to stay awake. How long have you been working as his ship's captain? Pasios took a bite from his cheese. For more than 20 years. My dad is a merchant sometimes, with other merchants. He goes on a voyage every summer to sell his crafted tools to other things of value. Um, Pasios glanced back at the sea and pointed south. Crete Island is his favorite destination. Have you been there before? Pasios looked back at the captain. Yes, I've been there numerous times during my voyages as a big merchant. Bring me back old memories, Captain chuckled. That's great. It has great trade benefits thanks to the Venetian Republic, which has control of the island. But why aren't you carrying loads of merchandise? Pasios pointed at the ship full of passengers who were sitting around conversing with each other. Oh, I quit being a merchant a few years ago. Pirates are somehow increasing in numbers. The captain shrugged. The merchant ships are their main target, so I just transfer people now in exchange for money. He sighed. Didn't you say that it's been relatively peaceful, though? Pasios was surprised and he looked around at the sea. Yeah, it has been so when I was actively working. Captain smiled a bit and looked at his ship in confidence. But with increasing threat these days, I'm more of a retired personnel who doesn't work much. He suddenly looked very sad. How's it been so far transporting Galen on his request? Oh, it's been nice. Better than what I had expected. We traveled often in the Aegean Sea, going to various places that he requests. Captain chuckled again. When I have to take him there, unless he has to hurry, I also take along many other people who are going somewhere in between his destination and where we had started from. Also, big ships are uncommon, so Galen likes to travel on mine as much as possible. He cleared his throat and drank some wine. Why does he like big ships? Pasios lifted his eyebrows in curiosity. Because he always brings his horse. It would be much of a nuisance on a small ship. Captain pointed at the horse which was sleeping somewhere at the main deck close to him. Pasios knew that Galen brought his horse. But it's just that he didn't know Galen would bring it at all times in his journeys. Then he talked with the captain, rested, ate some food, and fed Galen's horse until he noticed a glimpse of Constantinopolis far away. Soon the captain ordered his workers to adjust the sails to the rightful location that the wind favors. Many people came up to the upper deck to see Constantinopolis with a better view. Galen and Petros got up to the main deck, and the horse neighed, getting the attention of its owner. Thus Galen thanked Apicius for taking care of his horse, and sat with him as he waited for the ship to reach Constantinopolis. It was well into the afternoon when the ship came to Contuscalion harbor of Constantinopolis. It was an unbelievable scene for a lowly teenage peasant boy like Apicius. Such privilege and prestige to just be right there at that time on the way to becoming a soldier. He felt great joy inside, which was very overwhelming. That time felt like forever to him. He remembered it in his heart as a moment when Constantinopolis accepted him as one of its protectors. That amazing moment was finally over when their ship docked. Paisius calmed down himself and followed Galen, Petros, and other Romans on their way out of the ship. They thanked the captain when they saw him, bade farewell to his customers, and then took on a long walk to the military headquarters, through many streets, passing many buildings. When they reached their destination, Galen gave the credential note to the staff members. One of them looked at it carefully and said, "Look, I think you guys are honest, but you have to go through the second process because there had been too many liars." The staff member looked at the note for the second time. "This Heraclius guy, him. I don't know him. That's why I'm still suspicious even though the seal is genuine. But we'll take this. So just come back here next day, then we will tell you what's up." He then put the note into the bag which was next to him and looked at Galen. Even when Galen argued vehemently for Apicius, he still couldn't convince the stubborn staff members, so he cursed and left for the local inn to stay the night with Apicius and his servant. "Those stubborn bastards won't see the truth. Gosh, you see it now? This is how inefficient the system has got to." Galen clenched his fist very hard and he closed his mouth shut in anger. Paisius and Petros looked at Galen with a surprised look, since it was the first time that he had gotten this mad. Therefore Apicius offered him the wine that Petros brought from the dining hall down below. However, Galen thought otherwise and walked to the dining hall. At the end, they sat around at a small table and started ordering dinner. "I've been working as a messenger for around 8 years now, and nothing changes for the better." Galen sighed deeply and, with his hands, felt the roughness of the table before looking back at Apicius and Petros. "It's always gloomy here, and poor people constantly increase in number to the point that it's not even the biggest issue here in Constantinopolis, but just another commonly seen nuisance on the streets." This time he stomped lightly on the table with his fists. "Workers' wages are low and people suffer much, but thankfully I'm still content with mine, since it lets me live my life without any tightening budget issues." Galen looked around at other people who were seated around him. "Well, it's definitely not what I had imagined it to be. I'm shocked right now." Apicius, Apicius also looked around at his surroundings. People who have never been here before still have their fantasies regarding this place, but that's a far cry which they'll immediately abandon once they set foot here. Galen chuckled and drank his wine. "The slums in which I used to live in were worse than this area," Petros said and shook his head in disgust. "Galen, is it true that you lived in Thessalonica?" Pausius carefully looked at Galen. Galen flinched back in his seat. Yes. But, but where did you find that out?" "The ship's captain told me. What's his name, though?" Pausius realized that he had never found out about the captain's name. "Oh, Pelagius. I call him Uncle Pelagius." Galen yawned for a while. "He's a great man. I like him." Galen had a nostalgic look, perhaps thinking back at his past. "What makes you think he's a great man?" Pausius shifted himself from on his chair, trying to get into a comfortable position. He's a man of his words and a good friend to my father. Galen looked up at the ceiling and then back at Apossius. I was wondering what happened at Thessalonica. Captain Pelagius told me that you left the city with him. Apossius said, we escaped the city even though the Venetians commanded that no citizens dare leave it. Galen suddenly laughed joyfully. I was among the lucky ones who escaped before the most horrible year. Didn't Heraclius talk about this with you? Galen looked at Apossius with a smile. No, he didn't. All he said was up to that point too. He wouldn't talk about it. Apossius shrugged. But I want to hear what happened there. Apossius had a curious look. Man, that guy. Anyways, it was depressing. Very much to the point that the enemies were starving us out, and my family even sold their house to make ends meet. Galen sighed and ate some of his food. By the year when I left, the Venetians had some ships armed with artilleries. Many crossbowmen were on the walls guarding. Galen chuckled in an uneasy tone. However, I knew that in the long run the city will lose to the Turks. So my family and I, along with Uncle Pelagius and his family, and as many people who were trying to leave the city, successfully snuck out of the city for good, and that ship we just traveled on, and came to Constantinopolis. Galen grimaced in disgust. Where is Heraclius? Pausius said, and ate some of his food. I told him to leave with us at that time, but he refused. He's a tough soldier. So he stayed, and who knows how he survived at the end when the city fell. Galen nodded and smiled in satisfaction after eating some fishes. That's how the night went for them, with Apossius and Petros talking with Galen regarding the interesting stories of their past lives. When they were done eating, they went back to their room to sleep. The next day, they all went down to the dining hall and ate breakfast. Then Galen insisted that Apossius wash himself in the bathhouse, since he has to look nice and healthy in front of the recruiter. He didn't give him further details about where he was going, but just took him to be washed up. And all three were washed up. They set out back to the headquarters in haste. The weather was much calmer that day, allowing more people to go about their business in the streets. When they finally reached the headquarters after forcing their way through the crowd, they were surprised to see the same staff member waiting outside the building, waiting patiently and waving at them to come quickly. Oh, sorry, sir, I was hypersensitive yesterday, so I was waiting for you all this morning. I knew it was urgent, but I was such a fool to make you wait. The man seemed genuinely sorry. You! You! Galen barely held his temper and resumed with a calmer tone. I told you it was real. This boy really needs to get there. It was his teacher's wish. And can we be able to accompany him along with you to the place? Okay, I fully trust you guys now, and yes, I'll guide you to that place, the man said with an uneasy smile. After that, the four people made their way deeper into the city, towards the great church of Hagia Sophia. Pausius looked at the church for a while, especially at its dome top, and he compared it with the picture in his head. Of course, the great church was not so great church by now, and it became a sorry shadow of its marvelous past, and was much more like a ruin. The church had enjoyed better days until it was cleaned out by the Fourth Crusaders, the very people who were sent to fight the infidels. As he was thinking about the church's past, the staff member pointed towards a group of buildings. That's the building that you want to get to. It's at the far end. Do you see that small building? And here's a note you gave yesterday. Just hand it to the man in there. He handed the note over to Galen. Okay, I see it now. Take us there so that he won't get suspicious. Galen said and took the note. The guide agreed, and once again they walked, then approached the door. When they knocked on it, a soldier officer came out. He then noticed the guide and let them in. Okay, you may leave now. I'll take care of these travelers. The officer said to the guide and saw him go away in peace. He then turned to look at Galen, Passios, and Petros to speak. So, tell me, who are you guys? I'm Galen, one of the messengers of Constantinopolis. He's my servant, Petros, and he's Apassios, a student who's applying to join this military organization. Galen pointed at each person in a respectful manner. Oh, I know the name Galen. Nice to meet you. The officer held out his hands and Galen shook it. He then looked at Apassios. As for you, do you have anything that I can see? The officer waited for Apassios' response. Apassios said yes, and gave the officer the note that Galen had handed to him before. The officer looked at it and nodded slowly. Your name's Apassios, right? When Apassios nodded his head, he continued. Now, let me tell you this. The officer cleared his throat before resuming his talk. This thing that your teacher said, it means that you will be sent to a special group of soldiers kept in the Princess Islands. Pointed at something on the note for Apassios to see. Look here, he raised his name and put your name instead. I don't know if it's a good thing or not. That's because I don't know if you'll be able to adapt to the changing situations. The officer paused for a while to drink. Other than that, I recommend you to go there since not only do they get paid better than soldiers here, but also seem happier. However, it's up to you to decide. Officer looked at Apacius to decide. What? Special troops on that island? Oh yes, I would definitely want to go there. Lead me to that place, sir, please. Apacius was very excited to be traveling again because his home life was just so boring that he would do anything to avoid it again. Especially a sedentary lifestyle. In the officer's opinion, didn't matter much to him. The officer chuckled. Okay, I guess that you can go there, but I tell you, it won't be what you expect. You may not like it since you will be confined there for much of your life. Understood? Passius nodded his head in determination. Therefore, the officer returned the note back to Passius and showed them the map of the area and pointed at a location. This is a tavern where you must go if you want to join the organization. Just hand over this note to the tavern keeper. He'll know what to do right away. The officer wrote another note with his signature. This will let him know that you passed the second process. He then patted Apasio's back since Apasios was standing upright and seemingly very tense. Relax, dude. You don't have to be so serious and formal. Just take it easy. I see a good future in you. He grinned and gave his signature note to Apasios. When Apasios thanked the officer for everything he did, he dismissed him to go for his destination. After some time of walking, Apasios saw the destination and realized it was just another ordinary tavern, so it disturbed him since he felt like he was tricked. Suddenly, Galen stopped Apasios. Wait, Heraclius told me to give this to you. He then handed a stack of papers to Apasios. This is his training summaries with you, and you may need to give it to whoever takes you to that island. He should know how to deal with it. So good luck, Galen said and waved his hand as Apasios walked away, thanking him. When Apasios went into the tavern, he saw many people drinking and making merry. He walked up to the tavern keeper and showed him the note, along with the officer's signature note. The man looked at him carefully, then slowly disappeared into the back of the building while his coworker took upon his position. A little while later, the man came back out with his bag and motioned for him to follow. Passios followed him back out onto the street. We will head out for the Contascalian harbor, and we shall find a person who will get us there. The tavern keeper pointed towards the harbor. Passios nodded, and they waited to fetch a wagon to take them to the Contascalian harbor. Passios waved Galen a goodbye and continues his journey with the tavern keeper. How are you involved in this organization? Passios said. I used to be an Imperial Guard and worked diligently for many years. So the Emperor favored me and gave me the privilege of being in this kind of situation of accepting the recipients of the note for the Princess Island's milkmans. The tavern keeper motioned at Apotheos to hand him the note. Even though the note isn't yours, there's a signature of the previous owner, so it means that he feels you're qualified to have this kind of life, he said while looking at the note. The officer who gave me the signature note said that I will be confined in there for much of my life. Is that true? Pausius was starting to get uneasy about the situation he was getting himself into. He initially agreed with Heraclius' recommendation since he had nothing else planned for the future when his education term in the monastery came to an end. However, as it was really happening now, all of a sudden he wanted to go back home. Well, yeah, it's a lifetime contract. It's not too late to quit. You can always quit before you sign the paper at that island. The tavern keeper's response felt like a death knell to Apotheos, which made him shrink back in his seat. However, he just couldn't give up now, after all he had been through, so he decided to ask more questions. He then started finding out more and soon learned that the tavern keeper's name was Helios. After a long time of chatting behind the wagon, the driver told them that they had arrived at the harbor. Helios paid the driver and motioned for Apotheos to follow. Then they went checking for ship after ship after ship until Helios finally pointed to a sleeping man near a small ship. Hey, wake up! Helios shook the sleeping man and he was forced awake. Oh, huh? What? The man slowly opened his eyes and looked at his surroundings. What are you doing here waking me up? He then grimaced at Helios. Come on, Adam. An old mission has reached us again, after all these months of not doing anything of this kind. Helios shook his head in frustration. Seriously, why do I always see you out here getting drunk? Get a wife or something. Helios sighed. Says the one who doesn't have a wife either. Adam chuckled when he saw Helios flinch. Don't you dare tell me what to do, Helios. He coughed a couple times. Hey, just focus on your task. We have a recruit today. Helios pointed at Apotheos. Okay. Adam shifted his gaze to Apotheos. So, he's the chosen one for today? I guess so. He's not the recipient, just a student of the recipient, Helios said. My teacher gave it to me. His name is Heraclius. He served as a soldier captain in Thessalonica. Apotheos held out the notes. Adam slowly sat up and carefully looked at Apotheos for a while, then took his notes to take a look at them for a moment. Adam nodded his head while looking at them. When finished, he turned to look at Apotheos. I guess I will bring you to the island's lord. He will know what's up. But man, jeez. Adam scratched his head and patted the sand, frustrated by the annoying turn of the situation for him. He looked at his wineskins around him and started thinking. He was used to getting drunk by the beach and doing nothing since his life was just so happy thanks to his income from the government, and the island's lord being much more than enough. Oftentimes, some of his sailing buddies would come by to eat and drink together, and Helios, along with that officer guy, would join him as well. So it didn't feel like doing a chore as of that moment. Come on, Adam, we need to do this, Helios said and held out his hand to assist Adam to get up. Back to reality, Adam grabbed Helios' hand and got up. Then he slowly looked around his surroundings and moved over to grab the wineskins while telling Helios and Apotheos to step into the ship nearby. I need these to get me going. Adam held up his wineskins for them to see. Oh, come on, you already drank so much. Knock that out. You need to sail the ship, Helios said as he took away the wineskins. Adam was enraged, but he accepted his fate and moved on. And when many others got into the ship, and when others got into the ship, he began pushing it into the sea to be sailed, and they were sailing in a short moment. Alright, so I'm running out of breath, so that was the end of the chapter 1. And the next video I'll continue with chapter 2, which is called The Informants of the Sea. So thanks for listening and have a good day.